I went on some training a few years ago, and it was about 3 o'clock, we were due to finish about 4 o'clock, and suddenly a lady realised that she was in the wrong session. And she was supposed to attend some training for some accreditation, and she was attending the wrong session. So I'm just going to double check with you, are you all here for the 2 stressed out to care sessions? Yeah? And what was really funny was the lady who booked me to do the training said, oh my gosh, she said, I went to a train the trainers training just a couple of weeks ago, and they said that is the first thing to check when you deliver training. Is everybody here for the right session? No. I kind of started, no, I don't get it anyway. Right, so we're gonna be looking at how to cope with stress and burnout. I feel quite qualified to speak on the subject because I've struggled with stress and burnout myself, so I'm going to share a little bit of my story before we start. Also just something that I feel that God's shown me on the way in the car today, so I want to share that with you. So about 18 months ago, I was doing 2 jobs. I was working as the training manager for what was then known as Life of the World, now called Live and Recovery. I was doing that 2 days a week, and I was working 3 days a week for Transitions Residential Therapeutic Communities, which was a charity that I set up, and we were trying to pioneer what would have been the only young person's rehab in the country. So both quite demanding jobs. We've got 2 kids. My wife got diagnosed with a chronic pain condition. We moved house in the midst of all that. There was another horrendous family situation happened, and to cut a long story short, I ended up getting signed off work for 2 weeks with stress and anxiety. And I'm still on medication now for that. So I stand here as someone who is on that journey, and that's the place that I want to speak to you from today, really. What I felt as I was on my way praying here, that if God wanted to speak to anyone specifically, the verse that came to me was where it says in Philippians, doesn't it? And people often quote it is, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And what I felt was that for some of you today, that has almost been like a curse to you, but I feel like maybe for 1, maybe 2 specific individuals, you've been feeling really stressed out recently, you've been feeling really under the cosh, and somebody said that to you, and what I want to say is just don't hear that. Don't hear that if that's you. Because when Paul says that in Philippians, the context is, I have learned to be content in all circumstances, and then it goes on to say in verse 20, and in all this, I give thanks to God who strengthens me. So it's God who strengthens him to be content in all circumstances. Doesn't mean we have to do everything that comes our way. We're not superhuman. We're not messiahs. We're not. Yeah? Are you with me? Yeah. Good. Because I think that's really important. Because people will say those kind of scriptures to you, try to be helpful, but it's really not helpful. The first thing, I don't know if you ever thought of this, the first thing that man experienced when humanity was made, when God made us, the first thing we experienced was the day of rest, wasn't it? So we were made on the 6th day, and then we got the 7th day. And it says, and God rested. So not only did God rest, which he didn't need to do, but he did it anyway, but also, the first thing that humanity experienced was the day of rest. And that all work flows from rest, really. Alright. So, let's get on with it, shall we? Actually, yeah, one more point. As you're listening to this, if you're the kind of person who is, a hard worker, you're a grafter, you really put your heart and soul into things and you're passionate about what you do, that is absolutely brilliant. The temptation is to think, how does this apply to someone else? How does this apply to someone I'm working with? How can I use this? But what I want you to think about is, how does this apply to me? Okay? Because this is for you, this session today. Alright, so we're going to look at, obviously we all know, so obviously we all know it can be quite stressful working in the addiction field, can't it? I mean, Pat gave a great example of that, looking at families and the kind of approaches that families face. But also we all know as professionals, I don't need to go on about that, but we all know what it's like working with people with addiction and them trying to draw you into their chaos and give you responsibility for their recovery. And that can be pretty stressful. And not only that, but we live in an environment where funding is tight, there's funding pressures. So if we're not careful, it can really get on top of us, I think. And my heart at the end of this session is that at least you go away with one thing to help you look after yourself better. And one scripture I always use when I'm working with people around codependency, particularly, which is a danger for all of us, is that when Jesus says in Mark's Gospel, he says that we need to love our neighbour as ourselves. So if we're really selfish individuals, then we need to love our neighbours a lot more, don't we? But if we're at risk of codependency, actually what we need to do is love ourselves more. And it's getting those two things in balance. The call is not to go to like the minimum baseline level where we don't love anybody very much. We love our neighbours badly and we love ourselves badly. The call is to love ourselves as much as we love our neighbours, and that all flows out of the love of God, doesn't it? So that's my hope, is that at least leave you with something there. So we're going to look at a bit of self-awareness around stress, because I think, as has already been pointed out, the key to dealing with these topics is to get some self-awareness, to get some awareness of the issues, and particularly about how that applies to us. We're going to look a little bit at stress at work, and the effects of long-term stress. And we're also going to look at managing stress and recognising and dealing with burnout. So it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour, but there'll be some stuff in the middle of it that hopefully will be really useful to you. And I realised actually that I was recovering from burnout when I was delivering this session at Yeldon Manor as part of day 10 of a training programme. Sue's smiling at me, she was there. I suddenly thought, oh my gosh, I'm hitting all of these things, this is ridiculous. So hopefully it's helpful for you, and you can get help as well, if that's where you're at. So what is stress? I thought that picture summed it up quite well. What is stress? Stress is a state of being and not a health problem. That's the first thing to say. I think that's really important. It's a state of being and it doesn't start off as a health problem. Okay? So it's a physical response in the body, isn't it? In the limbic system, which we all deal with when we deal with people with addiction. The limbic system is the bit of us that deals with fight, flight and freeze in the brain. And it's a physical response which is designed to prepare us in a split second for immediate action. Yeah? Physical action. You're getting geared up to deal with the threat of, if we go back, when homes weren't as secure and life wasn't quite as complex as it is now, where a bear comes out of the woods, it's your limbic system that goes, fight the bear, freeze so the bear can't see you, or run away from the bear. Yeah? And if you know anything about bears, you'll know that fighting bears or running from bears don't work, so you're gonna freeze, hopefully. But the thing about stress is that if it's unchecked, and this is really what the heart of this is all about today, if it's unchecked, then it will lead to health problems, and it can result in really serious mental and physical illness. And that is not what God wants, is it? It's not what God wants for any of us here today. And I really want you to hear that. Okay, so how does stress work? You might have come across this before. If you have, it's not too complicated, and it might be something you can use if you haven't. But essentially, stress is not about actual situations that happen to people, it's about the way we perceive those situations. So it starts off with our thoughts and our thinking. So an event happens, that is why if a big spider ran in here, I wouldn't be bothered at all, but some of you might be. Anybody scared of spiders? 1, 2, right, 3, yeah, 4. So you'd probably be getting a bit anxious, getting a bit nervous, getting a bit unsettled, maybe running to the door. Because it's not about the actual event that happens, it's about the individual's appraisal or what they think about that situation or that environment. So some people thrive under stress, some people die under stress. And that's what leads to our emotions, our feelings. So that's what leads to your heart getting, pumping a bit faster, you can feel your breathing, your chest goes a bit tight, you start to get a bit jangly. And that then leads to so those two connect with each other, But they also connect with how we experience stress in the body. So we start to feel emotionally anxious, fearful. We start to feel changes in our rate of breathing, in our heart rate. And then that leads us to potentially do really unhelpful things, or possibly helpful things, depending on how we've. Some of us deal with stress quite well, but some of us deal with stress quite badly, and some of us, the patterns and coping mechanisms we've learned to deal with stress are also not particularly helpful. And those things, the danger is that those things basically form a feedback loop. So they all feed into each other. So as you feel yourself getting stressed, your brain thinks, I'm getting stressed, this is a threatening situation, this is a difficult situation. And then that makes you get more stressed. And sometimes you can feel, when I've done a lot of work with young people, and when you're talking with them about anger and anger management, they can feel the anger almost growing up their body. Yeah? And some people, they get hot feelings in their hands, that then start to sweat, and you get the feeling on the back of your neck. And that's all linked to stress. So we're going to do a little mental exercise, alright? And this will, I'm just illustrating the power of mind. And it's really simple, there's nothing new age about it at all. This is how all our minds work. So I'd like you to just close your eyes for a minute. Just do some slow breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. What I'd like you to do is just to picture, as you get home to your house tonight, you walk into the kitchen. And as you walk into the kitchen, there's a really nice, clean, white plate sat on the side. On that plate is a lemon. Next to that lemon is a nice sharp knife. What I'd like you to do, in your imagination, is pick up that knife and cut that lemon in half. As you look at the lemon, it's lovely and bright and yellow, and you can see the beads of juice just beginning to appear on the flesh of the lemon. And what I'd like you to do is pick up that lemon and just touch it to your lips. Feel the tingling against your lips, even a bit of juice. And then put that lemon back down, back on the plate. And when you're ready, you can walk out of the kitchen and open your eyes, and you're back in the room. How many people here, as they thought about the lemon, got saliva in their mouth? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 people. So just from thinking about a lemon for less than 2 minutes, you've got physiological change in your body because of that. That is what stress does. Yeah? That is an illustration of how stress works and how our perceptions of things can affect physiological changes in our body. If I'd have done it with a spider, I think we might have had some people run out, so... Okay, so we're going to just look at a little bit of what does stress look like. Anybody want to just stick up their hands? I'm just going to take one thing from, I don't want a whole list. If you want to suggest one thing that you think stress, what it looks like, go for it. Anyone? Yes?
Loneliness.
Sorry?
Loneliness.
Loneliness. Oh, right, that's really interesting. Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Nikki. Okay, yeah.
Underlying sense of anxiety.
Yeah, it's an underlying sense of anxiety just around everything that's going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Inaction. Freeze.
Oh, right. Yeah, freeze. Yeah, great. Sorry. Yeah.
Lack of control.
Okay. So you feel out of control, like that?
Yeah.
That powerlessness?
Powerlessness.
Yeah.
Anger.
Anger. You said that? Yeah. Anger. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Tiredness.
Tiredness. Yeah, stress, it's exhausting. The body's not meant to live in that state. Stress is designed for short-term action, and if you live with long-term stress, it is exhausting.
Build up of too many things you've got to do, and then you can't do them because there's too many.
Yeah. So the feeling of being overwhelmed.
Escapism in your mind,
Yeah.
in your thoughts, wanting to go on holiday.
That's just every Monday morning, isn't it, Kim? A little bit. Wide eyes and pupil dilation. That is your body getting ready for that fight, flight, and freeze. So to take in more information. It's what happens when you're on a stimulant drug, isn't it? Pale face. Your hair standing on end. That's kind of on the back of your neck. Flared nostrils. Dry mouth. Faster breathing. Faster heart rate. Butterflies. Tense muscles. Need to pass water. Don't need to urinate. More sensitive to the touch. Sweaty hands. Shaking. Less sensitive to pain, feeling the cold more, and if any of that sounds familiar, then hopefully you're not experiencing that too often, but if you are, then I'd love to pray with you at the end. I'd be really happy to do that, but there's going to be some practical stuff that you can do to get some help right now. Okay. And a lot of these sensations, when you take a stimulant drug, it effectively gets you ready for action, doesn't it? So a lot of those things there you'll notice are quite similar to when you take a stimulant drug. So the butterflies in the stomach, if you take a stimulant drug for a long time, you're going to probably get stomach problems because your system is diverting energy away from the stomach because you don't need it to digest food, it's getting you ready for action. Stimulant drugs do the same thing by keying into that system. Okay, just a little point is that cortisol is a stress hormone. That's kind of what causes people to feel, sometimes pain in their back. It's a stress hormone that, and it's also released when you take, most stimulant drugs and alcohol as well. So it's really useful to know about this stuff from the point of view of not just yourselves, but also the people you're trying to help as well. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Good morning, let the stress begin. Does anybody feel like that going to work? Yeah. Okay. So what is stress at work? We're going to look at a little bit at what the health and safety executives say about this. They define stress at work as the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressures or other types of demand placed on them at work. I mean, it's kind of useful, isn't it, I suppose, but it's just a description. But what I want you to think, and just for a minute, is what makes you feel stressed or vulnerable at work? So I'd just like you to take just a minute before we move on. Where are you vulnerable? We spend a lot of time getting the people that we work with to think about where they're vulnerable and what situations are likely to cause them to relapse. But we don't always spend much time thinking about our own issues and where we're vulnerable, and I think that is really important. Okay, so we move on. What does long-term stress look like? So the first bit is just kind of your body gearing up for action, more like short term, but it's important that we think about long-term stress because some of us here might be suffering with that, and it's good to be able to identify it, because if we don't, actually we're probably not going to cope with it very well, and long-term that is going to put us out of this kind of work really. Okay, so headaches, you might get aches in the necks, shoulders, back, legs, those kind of things. Nerves and disturbed sleep, that's certainly what was happening to me when I was really stressed out. You might get skin conditions, some people break out in hives when they're under stress. General tension, loss of appetite, indigestion and ulcers, so you'll be quite familiar with that, people getting stomach ulcers. Poor circulation and heart disease. Those are some of the major effects of long-term stress. So now what I want to do to kind of bring this all together a bit more is to just get us thinking about what our personal stress factors are and how we can cope with those. Now, there should have been a handout actually. I think I've emailed it to Mary. You've got a handout? Okay, if you haven't, we'll be alright, it's okay. So we've got these questions. Hold on, not going too far. No, okay, we'll do this bit first. I think I've just put it in a slightly different order. So I'd like to think about what are your personal stress factors and how do you cope? Okay, and then we'll look at a little bit about managing stress and some ways that we might be able to do that to help ourselves better. So there's different examples, aren't there, of how people cope. Some people withdraw from the situation, and the reality is that might be necessary at the time. You know, you might need to withdraw, it might be really important. But long term, if you withdraw from every stressful situation, it's not going to help, and you're going to get you get more anxiety about that, not less. It's counterproductive. So some people like to talk to friends. That's a good thing to do. I encourage you to do that. Or we can pray. We can talk to God about these things. That's really good. There are environmental solutions, aren't there? So having lavender on your pillow before you go to sleep, that's quite relaxing. That's a good thing to do. Really thinking about your diet. I did some training recently down in Southampton, and there was a lady there who said she was getting all these physical health problems. And she was really pressing into prayer. And she suddenly thought, you know what? I think I'm going to go and see a dietitian. And she saw a dietitian, and they said, you need to cut out sugar. And she did that, and it's helped her tenfold. Almost all of her physical health problems have gone away. Because sugar is an inflammatory, and you can argue from the 5 World Health Organization criteria for an addictive substance, sugar fits all of them. And if you don't think sugar's a health problem, because we tend to think about addiction in terms of what's the most, major health problem, don't we? So, smoking being a prime example of something that's really, it causes like long-term and widespread health issues. And actually sugar is a massive problem. We've got huge levels of obesity, huge levels of diabetes, these things are all on the increase. But anyway, that's controversial maybe. We're all addicted to sugar, probably here. But thinking about our environment is actually really important. Thinking about listening to music, doing relaxing things, burning a candle, taking some time to just de-stress, going for a nice walk somewhere where it's nice and out in the country. Then we've got physical things. Actually, the diet fits better under that, really. Breathing exercise is really helpful. Exercising, that's really good. And then mental and emotional ways of coping are actually to feel our pain and cry, to shout, to really sound off. I've had some great times shouting at God, making really powerful and releasing times. Taking time to rethink and reframe the issues. One of my friends has a great phrase. He says, some people like to turn every opportunity into a problem. I prefer to turn any problem into an opportunity. And when you're stressed, you just can't do that, to be honest. It's really difficult to look at things in that kind of positive way. Something I got really into was meditation, Christian meditation. To really recommend a site called Christian Mindfulness. It's really good. It's about really digging into the power of meditating on scripture and contemplative prayer, and I think that can be really, really helpful. So I recommend that. So there are some things. I don't know how you cope, but now I'd like you to think through that while we're here. And what we're going to do, I'm going to give you these questions, and then I'd like you to just share with, probably just with the person next to you, to be honest, one thing that you do to manage stress that is effective currently, okay, and one thing that you think you might do going forward, okay? So, first question is, do your current strategies help, or are there others that might work better to manage stress? So we haven't got a handout, I'm not sure about that. What in particular makes you feel stressed in this line of work? Where are you vulnerable? What 3 of your personal stress factors or indicators show that you are stressed? What are 3 of your current coping strategies and how well do they work for you? And what new coping strategy or strategies would you like to try and why? Okay? Can we do that? Do that now? Yeah, just take time. I'll go back over the first one. So do your current strategies help? Are there others that might help, might work better? Because this is really important that when we feel stressed, we tend to be deceived into thinking like a victim. I'm damned if I do and I'm damned if I don't. There is nothing that I can do about this, but that is completely untrue. And we do need to face the facts and accept reality. But then, what we really want to do is find faith and hear what God wants to say to us, which might be through caring friends, through scripture, through prayer, and to face our feelings, to face the situation, and to work through it. Yeah? So do your current strategies help, or are there others that might work better? And then I'll put these up. Okay. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to do that. Then we'll share, and then we'll come back together. Did anybody, from that little discussion, does anybody have a new thing that they're going to try to help them deal with stress better? Maybe some massages. Are you offering, Pete? No, that's pretty, yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, that's good. Guys, can I have your attention, please? Thank you. That's great. So, over there, massages, that's something that they're going to try. Pete's going to try. I think that sounds great, actually.
Cut down sugar.
Cut down sugar?
When I'm stressed, I get a lot into sugar.
Okay, yeah.
Chocolate
Absolutely.
is number 1.
I gave up caffeine a few years ago, and tell you what, my sleep is so much better since I did. Anyone else? Anyone want to get anything?
Just the word of knowledge about weeding in the garden.
Weeding in the garden?
He hates weeding.
Anyone else get anything they're going to try?
Well, I manage my stress. I take a long walk in the forest. I was talking to this young man. I take a long walk to be able to take my mind out of that circumstance.
Brilliant.
And that it works for me.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Really appreciate that. A long walk in the forest. Sorry, I've got Roger to back first.
Yeah, I think as you were talking, I saw some of the areas that were stressful, and I've just sort of been blocking them out my mind for. So it's actually being able to talk to somebody about the areas that are stressful is something I think really like. I need to do that.
Good. Excellent. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, you were next.
It's not so much avoiding what's causing the stress, but just that gentleman just said about walking, avoiding your reaction to the stress.
Yeah.
So if you're isolating yourself because of the stress, de-isolate yourself. You can't avoid the situation, but avoid the consequences.
That's why I think one of the things I do personally is I sing, while I'm walking sometimes. It just comes spontaneously, and that makes you feel at peace inside. So when you do the singing, it's a kind of therapy, It works for me very well.
Yeah. Singing releases endorphins as well, which is your body's natural painkiller. Okay, we've got you 3, and then that's it. Yeah, go for it.
Just trying to take captive your thoughts, because I think your thought life really indicates how you feel about things.
Yeah.
So if you feel yourself feeling stressed out about circumstances, just speak to your self-talk.
Self-talk, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. Self-talk is really important.
I was going to say that I think sometimes stress isn't just about work. Sometimes even when you're at home, the technological world we live in, you've got your emails, your text messages, Facebook, and social media, all this stuff. And I think one of the strategies that I recently started to use is, I don't know about other people, but I usually leave my phone on to have a bedside table. And research shows that even just leaving your phone on there doesn't allow you to relax. So I put my phone in airplane mode and then go to sleep. So then, for some reason, that always gives me better sleep. So that's probably quite good strategy.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Tara.
I just think, putting a bit of fun factor into into your life as well.
Doing something fun,
Absolutely.
enjoy, or something new that just takes you away and you can just de-stress.
Thanks, Fiona. Yeah, thank you. One of the things I did when I obviously had to go through a real time of reflection when I had these 2 weeks signed off with stress and anxiety, I'd been working sometimes 36 hours straight without sleeping. So I really had to think about that for obvious reasons. And one of the things I realised was that I didn't do anything that was just for me. So I had quality time with my wife and kids, quality time with my kids, and focused time at work, and I didn't do anything that was just for me. And so I joined the gospel choir, and I love it, because I used to love music, it was a big part of my life, and I just hadn't made any time for that. So I'd really recommend that. And if that's the only thing that comes out for you today is that you get one new strategy to cope with stress, I think that's hopefully time well spent. But we're going to just quickly, we've not got long, but maybe like 5-10 minutes max, to just look a bit at burnout, because if you see yourself in this, then it's really important that you get help soon. So there's 4 stages of burnout. I've just amalgamated 2 models together because I felt that was the better way to do it. So one of them had 3 stages, one of them had 4, so I kind of brought those 2 together. So the first stage of burnout is called the balancing act. So that's really where you can't do your job because you haven't got the resources. It might be because actually your job is a 100-hour week job and you're being expected to do it in 37 and a half hours. You know, it might be because actually it's not the right job for you. There could be a whole host of reasons. It might be, some of your team's left, so you've got a whole shed load of extra work. It could be all kinds of things, couldn't it? But you're working longer hours, you're missing meals, you're missing breaks, and actually, all of that stuff, you'll be less productive rather than more productive. You really will. And what you'll notice is that you get dissatisfied with your work, that you get inefficient. You lose stuff even on your desk. Oh man, when that happens to me. You get a general sense of fatigue, so we talked about that, general tiredness, sleep disturbances, and that can mainly be around your busyness in your own head. And as Jim mentioned about getting into an escapist activity. So we all know the classics, drugs, alcohol, zoning out in front of the TV. That could just even be that you do, I would sometimes, even though I had this huge volume of work, I'd spend time doing something really inconsequential on the computer, like dealing with something on LinkedIn. It wasn't important at all, and, rather than getting on with the task at hand. It's easy to do that. The second stage is pessimism and doubt, and this is where it's really setting in, that you start to really doubt yourself and your own abilities to deal with the situation. That's overall what happens. The first symptom stages are getting worse. You start to feel quite depressed about your situation, with a lack of confidence about the future. People get this thing called the imposter syndrome. They start to feel like they shouldn't be doing their job, they're going to get discovered that they're not as good at it as people think they are, or they've just got no right to be there. And a sense of shame comes with that. And I tell you what, almost everybody has imposter syndrome at some point. I had a professor at university who used to be the chief editor for the Psychologist magazine, and he admitted that he had imposter syndrome at times. But this is when it's dominating. It's not just once in a while, it's happening regularly. And that can lead, then you start to get cynical and hard-hearted. And it's just such a desperate place to be when you're in that place. And it can get silly. It comes out of insecurity and fear, but it actually leads to us becoming really quite callous and hard-hearted and quite mean-spirited normally to those around us, which is not good. And we start the self-protection. And the last one is crisis. So nobody can keep going at top speed. We all know that. But often we don't like to face that reality. Physical symptoms get worse or start to increase. And small things feel very personal. You get that sense of, you're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. But it really is critical to do something. Really, if you're in that place right now or you know someone who is, don't let that continue. It could lead to a heart attack or something even as serious as that. There's a guy I knew who was a church leader and running his own business, and he had a heart attack which was primarily brought on just through the stress of everything he was trying to do. and you develop this escapist mentality. So it's not just a little thing you start to do, it becomes quite a, you're constantly thinking about a world away from where you are. And there's a famous writer, I think it was called John Kabat-Zinn. He's a Buddhist writer, but he said that alcoholism is the disease of living somewhere else. I thought it was a really interesting way of thinking about alcoholism and addiction. So if we're always somewhere else in our thoughts, we're not present, are we? We're not engaging with what we're here to do, and actually we're living an escapist life, which is just what we're trying to encourage our clients not to do. So if you recognise that you're in there, in that space, and it's all too much, there are ways we can deal with it. I'm just going to get someone to read a quote.
Before throwing up your hands, remember, burnout is not for whim. A lot of other folks would have jumped ship much earlier. Many of you reach the farther stages of burnout because of your tenacity and dedication. You have a strong sense of responsibility and don't like being deterred from reaching your goals. All noble qualities, unless compelled by rigid perfectionism, and there's only one right way thinking. Then, pursuing your goals takes a backseat to proving others wrong and overcoming humiliation. You are chasing, maybe also being chased by, ego-driven egos. Equally, especially in times of overload, uncertainty, and major change. Driven and rigid responsibility can quickly transform a performance benefit into a personal and professional liability.